Have you ever felt the weight of someone's silence? So loud, it echoes through every part of you. When you leave, she doesn't just notice the quiet, she feels it. It wraps around her like a fog, thick and heavy. It follows her through the house, into her car, across her day. Where your voice used to bring warmth, now there's a chill. Where your presence once brought peace, now there's a hollow space she can't fill. It's not just about you not being there. It's about the sudden disappearance of the energy, the attention, the little moments that once made her feel seen. Now, there's just silence, and that silence speaks louder than words. She starts wondering what happened. Not just what changed between you, but what shifted inside her. The absence doesn't just create space, it creates questions. Was she too much? Was she not enough? Did she say something wrong? Did you even notice her fading into the background before you left? And maybe you didn't mean for it to happen. Maybe you were just busy or going through something. But for her, that space you left behind became something far more personal. It became a mirror that reflected her fears, her hopes, and her aching confusion. You see, love makes people vulnerable, and she gave you her trust, her attention, her time. She let you into parts of her life she doesn't show just anyone. When someone matters, their absence becomes more than a missing body. It becomes a missing piece. And when that happens without warning, it triggers something deep. Not just sadness, but self-doubt. Not just longing, but restlessness. The kind that keeps her up at night, replaying conversations and moments, trying to make sense of what went wrong. But here's the truth, she's still there, still thinking, still feeling, still hoping that somehow you'll recognize what your absence has done. Not to guilt you, but to awaken something in you. Because when a woman feels deeply, she doesn't just miss you. She questions the world around her. She becomes quieter, more careful. And yet, somehow, she grows stronger in the silence. Because it's in that silence that she begins to hear her own voice again. The one she may have silenced for you. If you've ever wanted to understand what truly happens when you leave, not just physically, but emotionally, stay with this. Don't scroll past this moment, because the story unfolding isn't just hers. It might be yours too. The truth you've been avoiding, the emotion you've tried to bury, the connection you may not have realized you're losing, it's all here. Waiting to be understood, waiting to be felt, and maybe, just maybe, waiting to be changed. This isn't about blame, it's about awareness. Because when you truly understand what a woman feels in your absence, you won't see silence the same way again. You'll see it as the call it really is, the call to wake up before everything you once had becomes a memory you can't touch anymore. She sits with questions that have no answers. They loop in her mind day and night, forming invisible scars. What did I miss? Did he stop caring? Was it something I said or something I didn't say? This isn't overthinking. This is the human need for closure. When someone vanishes from your life, physically, emotionally, spiritually, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like abandonment wrapped in silence. And the hardest part, she has to grieve what she doesn't even fully understand. Because when someone leaves without words, without explanation, the mind fills in the blanks with pain. You might think she's fine. She posts pictures. She smiles in public. She laughs with friends. But none of that means she isn't hurting. Because the most dangerous kind of pain is the kind hidden behind performance, the kind buried under pride. She doesn't want to seem weak. She doesn't want to be the one who reaches out first. So she keeps it all inside, every fear, every question, every ache. And while you're out living, unaware or unwilling to face the damage, she's carrying the weight of confusion that shouldn't be hers to bear. This is where her self-doubt multiplies. She begins to believe that maybe she wasn't enough, that maybe her love was too intense, her care too inconvenient, her presence too demanding. She rewrites her worth based on your silence. That's what emotional abandonment does. It doesn't just hurt, it changes people. It makes them question their value, even when they gave nothing but love. You didn't just leave a room. You left her with a story she now has to untangle without the help of the one who wrote it with her. Still, she holds on, not to you, but to hope. Hope that the pain means something. That this storm isn't just destruction, it's revelation. Because deep down, a part of her still wants to believe that maybe you care, even if you don't show it. That maybe you're just scared, but every day that passes without a word chips away at that hope. And soon what was once longing becomes something else entirely, numbness. But here's the thing you may not realize. Even in the quiet, she's evolving. With every unanswered question, she's finding answers inside herself. With every moment of doubt, she's learning to stand taller. You didn't break her, you taught her where the cracks were, and she's sealing them. slowly, painfully, but permanently. So while your absence feels like a loss to her heart, it is also a lesson to her soul. You still have a choice. Because if you truly care, silence isn't strength. Distance isn't clarity. And time doesn't always heal. It often hardens. If you want to matter, you show up. You speak. You explain. Because without that, all she's left with are ghosts of a connection that could have been real. If only you had chosen to stay present when it mattered most. There's a moment she doesn't talk about. The moment she realizes you're not just gone. You've withdrawn. Not just your body, but your presence, your energy, your attention. What hurts most isn't the distance, it's the shift, the subtle way your eyes stopped looking the same, the way your responses got shorter, the way you used to care, and then you didn't. That kind of change doesn't happen overnight, but when it hits like a wave, and she feels it deep in her chest. Emotional detachment isn't quiet for the one who feels left behind. It's thunder wrapped in silence. She tries to rationalize it. Maybe you're overwhelmed. Maybe life got hard. Maybe you just need space. But eventually those maybes stop mattering, because space without communication is confusion. And confusion repeated becomes damage. That damage doesn't always show on her face, but it lives in her heart. It leaks into her thoughts, into her sleep, into her confidence. Because when someone once made you feel like home, and suddenly they treat you like an option, the hurt isn't just emotional. It's cellular. You may not see the change in her, but it's there. Her laughter is less free. Her texts are more measured. Her voice is softer. Not because she's calm, but because she's shrinking. She starts second-guessing every word she says. She holds back affection, fearing it'll be met with indifference. She protects her joy because it feels unsafe to share it with someone who no longer meets her where she is. Emotional safety isn't a luxury, it's a need. And when it's gone, survival mode begins. That's when the pain becomes physical. Her body starts responding to your absence as if it's a threat. She loses appetite. Sleep feels distant. The smallest things make her cry. This isn't weakness, it's biology. When emotional bonds break without explanation, the nervous system reacts like it's in danger. Her heart races not from excitement, but from fear. Fear that she was wrong about you. Fear that her love was misplaced. Fear that you never really cared the way she did. And yet, through all of that, she still holds on longer than she should. Not because she's desperate, but because she believes in love. Real love. The kind that shows up even when it's hard. The kind that communicates even when words feel messy. She's not asking for perfection. She's asking for effort. For honesty. For presence. The kind of presence that says, I see you. I hear you. I'm still here. If you've left emotionally before you've left physically, she feels it. Every shift, every delay, every excuse. And she deserves better. She deserves clarity over confusion, truth over guessing, and connection that doesn't disappear when things get uncomfortable. So ask yourself, are you showing up or are you fading out while expecting her to wait? Because she won't wait forever. And when she finally chooses herself, your silence will be the loudest thing you've ever heard. By the time you notice her silence, it's no longer silence, it's protection. It's boundaries being rebuilt from the pieces you helped break. She's not ignoring you, she's preserving herself. There's a difference. At first, she may have waited for your call, your message, your presence to return. But now, the waiting has turned into a wall. Not out of bitterness, but out of necessity. She had to choose between losing you and losing herself. And when the pain became too loud, she chose to hear her own voice again. The moment she stops reaching out is the moment she starts healing. Slowly, quietly, but intentionally. She begins to notice the things she gave up while trying to keep you close. Her dreams, her peace, her sense of self. And it hits her she had been pouring her energy into someone who was no longer pouring anything back. That kind of imbalance doesn't just drain, it erodes. But even in erosion, something new can be born. She starts remembering who she was before she tried to become everything for someone who couldn't see her worth. This isn't about blame, it's about truth. Emotional absence is a form of rejection, even when it's unspoken. And over time, she learned to stop chasing shadows of affection. She stopped begging for conversations that never started. She stopped bending just to keep someone who wouldn't even lean. And now, instead of wondering what she did wrong, she's asking why she stayed silent for so long. That question changes everything, because once she stops apologizing for needing more, she starts demanding it from life. There's power in her stillness now. Not the kind that waits, but the kind that prepares. She's not broken, she's rebuilding. Her standards are rising, her self-worth is sharpening. And the love she once gave so freely is being protected, guarded, held for someone who can actually hold it back. If you think she'll always be there, if you believe time will erase the absence you created, you're misunderstanding her strength. Time doesn't always soften, it often awakens. She's not looking for revenge. She's not keeping score. She's finding peace. The kind that doesn't rely on closure from someone else. The kind that grows in the quiet moments when she realizes she deserves more than partial love. She deserves full presence, real effort, words backed by action. And until she gets that, she's no longer afraid to walk away. Because walking away isn't loss when it means walking back to yourself. If your absence didn't wake you up, her growth will. One day you'll feel her energy shift, not in anger, but in indifference, not in pain, but in peace. That's when you'll realize you didn't lose her in a moment. You lost her in the slow fade of your presence, the steady drip of your silence, the moments you thought didn't matter, but they did, every one of them. And now, every step she takes forward is a reminder. The love she gave freely will never beg again. You thought her silence meant she was waiting, that she was still hoping, still holding space for you. But silence, when it lingers too long, transforms. It no longer waits. It decides. It becomes a quiet goodbye, a soft but final shift in energy. She may have once cried over your distance, but now she's done explaining her worth to someone who kept asking her to prove it. She's no longer tracing the outlines of what could have been. She's redrawing the boundaries of what she will no longer accept. What you mistook for patience was actually grace. What you saw as her always being there was her giving you chance after chance to rise. And when you didn't, she did. You may have walked away first, but she's the one who left with strength, because staying for love that asks her to shrink is not strength, it's surrender. And she's not here to surrender her soul to someone who couldn't even offer consistency. When the quiet became her only answer, she chose to speak to herself instead. And what she heard in her own voice was this: I will not beg for the bare minimum ever again. She doesn't need loud exits or dramatic closure. Her peace doesn't require permission. She let go not because she stopped caring, but because she finally started caring for herself more. That's the part you didn't see. You were looking for signs she was still hurting. You were waiting for the text that never came, the tear that never fell, the apology that never belonged to her. But real healing doesn't announce itself. It shows up in the way she no longer flinches at your name, in the way she no longer waits for you to see what's been lost. She won't tell you how much it hurt. She won't explain the nights she questioned everything, because it's no longer her job to educate someone who chose absence over accountability. That lesson is yours to learn now, not in her presence, but in her absence, not with her help, but in your own silence. The very silence you gave her is now the one you must sit with, and in that silence you will hear it, the sound of everything you took for granted echoing back at you. But she is not bitter. She is better. Not because of what you did, but because of what she decided. To grow, to rise, to choose love that doesn't come with conditions or disappear when life gets inconvenient. You may remember her kindness. You may remember her loyalty. But what you'll remember most is the moment she stopped showing up. Not out of anger, but out of wisdom. Because she finally saw the difference between someone who values her and someone who simply uses her presence to fill an emotional void they refuse to heal. She's not looking back. She's not checking, if you've noticed, because she's finally walking toward the one thing you couldn't give her, herself. You never noticed how much strength it took for her to keep showing up when she felt unseen, to smile when her heart was cracking, to support you when she felt unsupported. That wasn't weakness. That was resilience. But resilience without reciprocity turns into exhaustion. She didn't walk away because she stopped caring. She walked away because she was tired of giving her all to someone who didn't know how to receive it, protect it, or return it. Love cannot survive in one direction. It withers when it becomes labor instead of connection. She's not angry that it ended. She's hurt that you didn't fight for it, that you let it fade without urgency, without clarity, without care. She would have given you everything, her time, her heart, her future, but all she needed in return was presence. Not perfect words, not constant attention, but a consistent sense that she mattered, that she was chosen, not as a convenience, but as a commitment. But instead, she watched your energy shift, your effort decline, and your silence grow louder than your love ever was. What she needed was never complicated. She needed communication, not avoidance, reassurance, not retreat, effort, not excuses. She needed to feel emotionally safe with you, not anxious about your next move. She needed partnership, not a puzzle. And while she tried to stay hopeful, her heart kept whispering the truth. Someone who values you never makes you feel like you're too much. They make room, they show up. They choose you, not just in the beginning, but every single day. You thought she was strong because she didn't fall apart in front of you. But strength looks different when it's born from survival. She didn't cry for sympathy, she cried in solitude. She didn't scream for attention. She went silent to protect her peace. You thought she was fine because she carried the weight quietly. But her silence was not peace. It was her reaching the limit of pretending everything was okay when she was slowly breaking inside. Now that she's healing, she's rewriting the story. She's no longer apologizing for her needs, no longer begging for emotional crumbs. She's no longer giving energy to people who see her as replaceable. She's giving that love back to herself. The same love she once poured into you with everything she had. That is what growth looks like. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady, powerful, and irreversible. You had the chance to rise with her, to grow through the discomfort, to meet her halfway, but you stayed still. And in doing so, you made her realize that love should never feel like waiting for someone to become ready. Real love is aligned. It's active. It shows up, especially when it's hard. And now, as she moves forward, she's not chasing closure. She's becoming it. Not because you gave her peace, but because she chose it. Because even in your absence, she found the most important presence of all, her own. The hardest part wasn't that you left. It was realizing you never truly arrived. You were there in body, but not in soul. Your words sounded right, but they lacked depth. Your touch was warm, but your heart felt distant. She kept waiting for something real to land, something that would anchor her in the storm you created with your uncertainty. But what she got were fragments, promises that hovered, moments that almost mattered, love that only lived in pieces. And it's in that emptiness, in that aching hollow space where love should have been, that she found the strength to stop begging for more. You thought she was soft because she gave so much. Because she forgave the delays, the detachment, the excuses. But what you failed to see is that softness takes courage. It takes bravery to love in the face of silence, to stay vulnerable in the presence of emotional distance. And when she finally stopped, it wasn't because she ran out of love. It's because she ran out of places to put it. You left her holding all the weight, all the questions, all the hopes. And she realized that carrying both sides of a relationship is not love. It's abandonment dressed as effort. She had to teach herself what you should have taught by example, that love is not proven by staying, but by showing up with truth. Not just when it's convenient, not just when it's easy, but when she's struggling, doubting, aching for clarity. That's when presence matters most. But you retreated. You chose comfort over confrontation, distance over depth. And in doing so, you taught her the most powerful lesson of all. The absence of love speaks louder than the presence of someone who won't commit to showing up. She stopped trying to decode the silences, the mixed signals, the emotional pullbacks. She stopped turning herself into a detective trying to find proof that she mattered. Because the truth is, real love doesn't confuse. It calms. It builds. It creates space, not tension. It nurtures growth, not wounds. And now, with every boundary she builds, with every breath she takes away from your chaos, she gets closer to the version of herself that doesn't just survive heartbreak. She transforms through it. Her silence is no longer sadness. It's resolve. It's clarity. It's the sound of a woman who is no longer available for one-sided love, for emotional vagueness, for energy that can't be trusted. You had access to a version of her that was patient, forgiving, loyal through storms. That version no longer exists. Not because she changed to hurt you, but because she evolved to protect herself. You will remember her, not because she begged, not because she broke, but because she didn't. Because when the time came to choose, she didn't choose to chase. She chose to rise, to protect her peace, to stop settling for almost. And now, in her absence, you'll come face to face with the presence of what you lost. You never realized that while you were pulling away, she was learning how to live without you. Every unanswered message, every cold moment, every time you made her feel invisible, it all taught her something. Not about you, but about herself. That she can feel neglected and still keep going. That she can cry in silence and still rise. That she can be overlooked and still be powerful. You thought her love would keep her waiting, clinging to the hope that you might one day see her. But what you didn't know is that real love doesn't chain her down. It teaches her when to let go. She didn't want perfect. She never asked for you to be flawless. She just wanted presence, effort, truth. Not grand gestures or loud declarations, but the quiet consistency of someone who actually cared, who showed it, not just said it. But you kept showing her something else. That comfort mattered more than connection. That attention came only when it was convenient. That she was never fully a priority. And as much as she loved you, she started loving herself more. That's the shift you never saw. The invisible moment where survival became growth and growth became detachment. She realized love isn't supposed to feel like proving your worth every day. It's not meant to be a guessing game. Real connection feels like safety, like being chosen without asking, wanted without condition, valued without delay. And when she stopped feeling that with you, her soul began to whisper, "This is not where you stay." That voice grew louder each time she gave more and received less. And when you finally disappeared, all she could hear was the echo of that truth. She grieved quietly, not because she lost you, but because she lost herself while trying to hold on to something that kept slipping through her fingers. She mourned the version of her that tolerated uncertainty, the one that kept lowering her standards in hopes you might meet her halfway. And when that grief passed, what remained was power, not the kind that needs to be seen or validated, the kind that simply is, rooted, clear, grounded. She didn't need to speak it, she became it. Now she walks differently, her energy feels different, not because she wants to prove anything, but because she's free, free from the need to convince someone to love her, free from the cycle of giving to someone who only took, free from the pain of almost. She's no longer holding space for someone who never held her heart with care. You lost her slowly through every moment you thought didn't matter, but to her they did. And now, her silence says what words never could. She's no longer available for halfway love. No longer available for people who show up only when it's easy. She is not waiting. She is not hoping. She is rising. And in the space you left behind, she is building a life that doesn't look back. She no longer flinches at the thought of you. That name, that memory, that weight you used to carry in her world, it holds no power anymore. What once stirred emotion now brings calm. Not because she forgot, but because she no longer needs to hold it. Healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means owning it without being owned by it. And that's what she's done. She reclaimed every broken piece, not to rebuild what was, but to become something stronger than the pain that once defined her. She spent too long shrinking herself to fit the silence you offered, tiptoeing around your distance, bending to keep the connection alive. But love built on fear isn't love at all. It's survival. And survival has an expiration date. One day, the soul refuses to stay small. It demands truth. It demands expansion. It chooses self-respect over self-sacrifice. That day came for her, and everything changed. Not on the outside at first, but within. That's where real transformation starts, not in the moment someone leaves, but in the moment you stop abandoning yourself to be chosen by someone else. She doesn't chase anymore. She doesn't explain her worth, doesn't plead to be seen. Her love is not something to be auditioned for. It's not a performance to be graded. It's a presence, a deep, sacred thing that deserves to be met, not managed. And when someone shows they can't hold it, she no longer tries to hand it over gently. She walks away with grace and gives it to the one person who never stopped needing it, herself. You thought she'd come back. That time would soften her resolve. That distance would reignite the chase. But what you didn't understand is that absence doesn't always create longing. Sometimes it creates clarity. And clarity is what she needed more than anything, to see things as they are, to see you as you are, not through hope, not through potential, but through patterns, actions, truth, the truth that you didn't stay. Not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually, fully. And that truth became her freedom. She's not bitter, she's awake, awake to the reality that her love is a gift, not a compromise, that her time is sacred, her energy rare, and now she's intentional with both. She doesn't hand them out based on potential. She gives them to those who reflect her effort, her depth, her loyalty, to those who know how to hold a heart without making it beg for belonging. What you lost wasn't just her presence. You lost the chance to grow with someone who would have stood by you through anything, if only you had chosen her with the same consistency she chose you. But she's not looking for that choice anymore. She made her own, to rise, to heal, to expand. And the beauty of that choice is simple. She's not proving her worth to anyone. She's living in it. Every step forward is a reminder she was never too much. She was simply too powerful for someone who wasn't ready. She doesn't question her value anymore. There was a time she did, a time when your inconsistency made her second guess her worth, when your absence made her wonder what she did wrong. But now, she understands that someone else's inability to love her fully says more about their limits than it does about her capacity to love. She's no longer burdened by the weight of unanswered questions, no longer chasing closure. Because real healing isn't about finding the right explanation. It's about realizing you don't need one to move forward. What once felt like rejection now feels like redirection. You leaving created a space she never knew she needed. A space to breathe without fear, to wake up without walking on emotional eggshells, to exist without wondering if she was too much or not enough. In that space, she found stillness. And in the stillness, she found herself. The version of her that doesn't shrink to keep the peace. The version that doesn't negotiate with inconsistency. The version that knows peace is not earned through someone else's approval. It's claimed through self-respect. She is no longer impressed by charm. Words no longer hold the power they once did. She watches behavior. She listens to energy. She pays attention to how consistent someone is when things aren't easy, because she's learned that love without follow-through is just noise. She doesn't fear being alone. She fears settling for less than she deserves. And that shift has changed everything. It's not that she's hardened, it's that she's become discerning. Her heart is still open, but no longer to confusion. Your absence didn't destroy her, it built her. It pushed her into the fire of her own transformation. You thought you were walking away from someone weak, but what you actually left behind was a woman on the edge of awakening. And now she stands rooted in clarity, in strength, in truth. She no longer bends for temporary affection. She no longer waits for someone to choose her. She already has. She chose herself. And that choice became the foundation of a life that no longer includes begging for what should be given freely. If you cross her mind now, it's not with longing, it's with gratitude. Because pain was her teacher. Loss was her catalyst. And your silence was her invitation to finally hear her own voice. The voice that says she's worthy, she's enough. She's more than the fragments you gave her. She deserves a love that is whole, present, and brave. Not someone who disappears when emotions grow heavy, but someone who stays, not because it's easy, but because she matters. This is her rise. Quiet, steady, unstoppable. No longer defined by who left, but by who she became after. A woman who no longer needs closure to close the chapter. A woman who no longer waits to be seen, because now she sees herself, fully, clearly. And in that vision, she finds everything she was always looking for. She knows now that real love doesn't make you feel unsure. It doesn't pull away when things get heavy. It doesn't disappear when you need it most. Love shows up. Love stands firm. Love chooses you, even when it's inconvenient. She craved that kind of love, strong, steady, fearless. But what she got was a version that ran at the first sign of discomfort. You didn't have the courage to stay, and she no longer carries the pain of trying to understand why. Because when someone leaves and you find peace instead of chaos, that's not abandonment, that's alignment. Her peace is no longer negotiable. She protects it like a flame that took too long to spark. It's not because she's cold or closed off. It's because she knows the cost of giving her warmth to someone who can't hold it. That lesson wasn't taught in ease. It came through heartbreak, through lonely nights, through the sting of feeling invisible in the presence of someone who once claimed to care. But the deeper the wound, the deeper the wisdom. And now she lives from that place, not of fear, but of fierce clarity. You used to be the center of her thoughts. Every action, every emotion was tangled in the hope of your return. Now her world is centered around herself, not in selfishness, but in truth. Because the moment she placed herself first, she saw how much she was missing by waiting on someone who never fully arrived. She stopped asking for reciprocity from someone who didn't understand the language of commitment. She stopped explaining herself to someone who never really listened, and in that release, she found liberation. She's not looking over her shoulder anymore, she's looking ahead. Not for someone to fix her, but for someone who meets her healed. Someone who values presence over promises, depth over charm, effort over excuses. She doesn't need perfection, she needs consistency. And the difference is everything. She's no longer impressed by potential. She honors her energy enough to walk away when someone can't meet her where she stands. And she stands tall, not because she's never been broken, but because she rebuilt herself with pieces that you left behind. Her silence is not emptiness. It's power. It speaks louder than any argument, more clearly than any closure. It says, I've made peace with the ending. I've outgrown the cycle. I've chosen growth over comfort. She doesn't resent the past. She respects it for the role it played in shaping who she is now. But she doesn't dwell there, because nothing behind her holds more value than what's ahead. If you think she's the same woman you left, you're wrong. She's unrecognizable, not to herself, but to the version of you who couldn't see her worth. She's no longer waiting to be remembered. She's too busy living in the fullness of who she is, and that life, the one without apology, without hesitation, without you, is the life she always deserved. Now she's claiming it completely, unapologetically, fully awake to her own power. She no longer carries the weight of being misunderstood. Once, that confusion consumed her. She would lie awake, replaying every conversation, wondering if she said too much, felt too deeply, expected too honestly. But the truth is, she didn't ask for too much. She asked for the bare minimum of what love should be: presence, consistency, sincerity. And now she knows that the right heart doesn't need to be convinced to give those things. The right heart offers them naturally, without resistance, without fear. She no longer chases clarity from someone who blurred the lines on purpose. Her silence isn't about closing off. It's about choosing peace. She doesn't need to explain herself anymore. She doesn't need to justify why she walked away from confusion, from one-sided effort, from the ache of emotional neglect. When someone shows you who they are through absence, through excuses, through half-efforts, the most powerful response is to stop waiting. She responded, not with bitterness, but with boundaries. And boundaries are not walls, they are doors. They open only for those who come with truth in their hands and respect in their footsteps. She has found a strength that's not loud but unshakable. A strength that doesn't seek revenge or validation. It simply moves forward. She's not interested in showing what you lost. That's not her goal. Her goal is to live fully, to love without losing herself, to give without draining her soul. She's not closed off to love. She's just finally open to the right kind. The kind that doesn't leave her questioning her worth. The kind that doesn't disappear when her emotions rise. The kind that stays not out of guilt, but because it values her presence. You see, her absence in your life now echoes louder than your silence ever did in hers. Because now she no longer needs you to notice her absence. She needed you to notice her when she was there. But that moment has passed. That version of her, the one who waited, who believed, who held on too long, no longer exists. In her place stands someone who knows her own power, who trusts her own heart, who no longer compromises her peace for temporary connection. This is not a phase. It's a transformation. And transformations don't come with apologies. They come with decisions. The decision to stop settling. The decision to stop hoping someone else will change. The decision to change the story by walking away from what hurts and walking toward what heals. She made that decision. Not in one dramatic moment, but in quiet, consistent steps. One boundary at a time, one truth at a time, one breath at a time. She doesn't look back anymore, not because the past was easy to forget, but because the future finally feels worth walking into. Her journey no longer revolves around who shows up. It revolves around how she shows up for herself. And now every step she takes is a reminder her love is not a question. It's an answer. And she's done giving it to those who never learned how to listen. There comes a moment when her silence becomes her loudest truth. Not because she's holding back, but because she's finally done over-explaining herself. She's done trying to be understood by someone who never truly listened. She's done waiting for someone to catch up to the depth she was willing to offer from day one. What once looked like distance is now her boundary. What once seemed like retreat is actually her reclaiming space. Her silence doesn't mean she's numb. It means she's aware. Aware of her value. Aware of what she deserves. Aware that not everyone is meant to go where she's headed. She isn't hardened by absence. She's refined by it. Every unanswered message, every missed moment, every promise that dissolved into nothing, each one taught her something. Not about you, but about herself, about her resilience, about her capacity to feel deeply and still stand tall, about her ability to give fully and yet survive the emptiness left behind. She now understands that love isn't just about giving. It's also about receiving. It's about reciprocity. And she's no longer settling for half-hearted affection when her heart is whole and beating with everything she's willing to give. The emotional games that once confused her now look like clear red flags. The silence that used to sting now feels like space to breathe. She no longer interprets inconsistency as mystery. She sees it for what it is. a lack of commitment, a lack of clarity, a lack of courage. And she has no interest in trying to decode what was never honest to begin with. Her peace is sacred now. She doesn't invite confusion into her life anymore. She doesn't welcome love that needs fixing. She welcomes presence. She welcomes depth. She welcomes effort that matches hers. She's not angry. She's awake. Awake to her own capacity to heal. Awake to the truth that losing someone who didn't see her was never truly a loss. It was a release, a redirection, a necessary end so something real could begin. And in this awakening, she's not searching for someone to fill the gap. She's filling it herself, with self-respect, with purpose, with clarity. She's writing new standards in ink, not pencil, because she's not going back. She's not bending, or she's not lowering the bar just to feel less alone. What she's building now is not based on survival. It's built on self-worth. She's no longer trying to be chosen. She already chose herself. And that decision changes everything. She no longer fears being alone, because solitude taught her what connection never did. That peace is not found in someone else's arms, but in your own understanding of your worth. That love is not proven through presence alone, but through presence with integrity, with consistency, with truth. So while your absence once felt like a wound, it's now a scar she wears with pride, not because it didn't hurt, but because she healed. She grew. She let go. And now she stands stronger than ever, not waiting, not hoping, just rising. She no longer seeks closure from the outside. She's learned that not every absence needs explanation. Some people walk away because they're not ready. Some because they never truly showed up in the first place. And some because they simply couldn't match the love they were being given. But she's done trying to interpret the silence, done analyzing the distance, done waiting for someone to suddenly realize her worth. Her healing began the moment she stopped looking for why you left and started asking why she stayed so long in a space that didn't honor her. Every unanswered question turned into personal clarity. Every delay turned into direction. And every moment of rejection became redirection. She no longer places her value in how much someone misses her or how long it takes them to come back. Because if they had truly seen her, they never would have left her wondering in the first place. Love doesn't vanish when things get hard. Love doesn't stay quiet when the soul begins to tremble. Love doesn't turn away when presence is needed most. She understands now that absence speaks just as loudly as presence, sometimes louder. She doesn't hold resentment in her chest. It's not bitterness that fuels her. It's wisdom. The kind of wisdom that can only come from breaking and rebuilding, from feeling every wave of pain and still standing back up with dignity. She doesn't regret giving her heart. She regrets giving it to someone who wasn't ready to hold it with care. But even that regret is fading, because now she sees that it wasn't about what she lacked. It was about what she refused to keep denying, her own truth. She was never too much. Her love was never too intense. It was just too real for someone still running from themselves. What once drained her now fuels her. The space you left, she filled it with strength. The silence you gave, she replaced it with inner peace. The confusion you created, she turned it into certainty. She's not the same woman who waited. She's not the same heart that once begged for a sign. She's not asking anymore. She's deciding who deserves her energy, deciding which doors stay closed, deciding that her self-worth is no longer tied to anyone else's inconsistency. Your absence is no longer a weight, it's become her wings. She doesn't fear the echo of your silence. She walks in her own voice now, steady and certain. And if you ever wonder what she feels during your absence, understand this. She feels the freedom of no longer being attached to someone who took her for granted. She feels the calm of knowing she no longer needs to prove her worth. And she feels the power of becoming the woman she was always meant to be, whole, grounded, and unshaken by those who couldn't love her fully. Her heart is no longer a waiting room, it's a sanctuary. And only those who come with open hands and honest love will ever be allowed to enter again. She doesn't carry the weight of being misunderstood anymore. She's stopped shrinking herself to fit inside the small spaces others offered. No more diluting her emotions to make them easier to swallow. No more pretending to be fine just to avoid the discomfort of truth. She's done apologizing for needing connection, for wanting depth, for expecting the same energy she gives. Because now she understands that emotional honesty isn't weakness. It's power. And if that power intimidates someone, they were never meant to stand beside it in the first place. Your absence taught her more than your presence ever did. It revealed the parts of her you never took time to explore. It made her listen to the silence within and ask herself what she really wants. Not just from love, but from life. She realized that it's not about waiting for someone to change. It's about changing the way she sees herself, no longer through the lens of someone else's lack of appreciation, but through the clarity of her own self-recognition. The validation she once craved, she now gives to herself daily, with every boundary honored, every red flag walked away from, every moment she chooses peace over chaos. She's no longer impressed by the return of those who disappeared. The ones who think a message sent late at night can undo the damage of consistent neglect. The ones who show up when it's convenient, but vanish when love requires effort. She sees through the surface now. She reads energy, not excuses. And she holds herself to a higher standard than ever before, not from pride, but from growth. Real growth. The kind that only blooms after seasons of emotional drought. She knows now that love is not supposed to feel like guessing games or emotional roller coasters. It's not supposed to be earned through suffering or maintained through silence. Real love speaks, shows up, holds steady. And more than anything, it's mutual. She no longer stays where she has to fight to be heard. She stays where she is safe to be soft, where her vulnerability is seen as strength, not used as a weapon, where her presence is appreciated, not just tolerated. That's the standard now. And it's unshakable. She's done letting her heart be a home for those who only visit when they're lonely. She's done confusing intensity for intimacy. She's done mistaking potential for reality. She wants more than promises. She wants presence, consistency, truth. She wants someone who's not afraid to hold her hand and her truth at the same time. And until that shows up, she walks alone with dignity, not because she has to, but because she chooses to. She's no longer waiting to be chosen. She already chose herself. And in doing so, she created a life where love must come correct, or not at all. Because now she knows exactly what she deserves. And settling will never be an option again. She doesn't waste her energy convincing anyone of her worth anymore. She doesn't beg for love. She doesn't chase closure. She doesn't try to fix what someone else broke within themselves. That's not her responsibility. Her peace no longer depends on someone else's recognition. She knows that the moment you need to be validated by someone who couldn't even see you clearly, you begin to vanish within yourself. She's not disappearing for anyone ever again. She's standing fully in her presence, in her truth, in her unapologetic power. She's realized that silence speaks volumes, but so does self-respect. And self-respect doesn't scream. It doesn't argue. It simply walks away, quietly, clearly, with grace, not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. When love feels like confusion, she chooses clarity. When presence turns into pressure, she chooses freedom. When affection becomes a tool for control, she chooses distance. Because her heart isn't available to be toyed with anymore. It's not a space for temporary visitors. It's a place of depth, of loyalty, of truth. Every time someone left, she used the space they created to rise, to reflect, to reclaim what she once gave away too easily, her time, her energy, her focus. She understands now that some people don't leave because of who she is. They leave because they're not ready for what she brings, and that's not her burden to carry. She doesn't internalize the absence anymore. She doesn't take it as proof of not being enough, because she knows she was more than enough. She was too real for someone who wasn't ready for real love. She no longer holds on to the idea that one day they'll understand her worth, or whether they do or not is irrelevant. Because the ones meant for her will never need reminders. They'll see her, feel her, value her, not just in moments of convenience, but in the quiet spaces where love is tested. And until then, she's not waiting. She's building, growing, becoming. She's becoming the kind of woman who no longer hopes to be chosen. She becomes the chooser. This shift didn't happen overnight. It took pain. It took breaking. It took getting tired of the cycle. But now she looks in the mirror and sees someone she's proud of. Someone who refuses to settle. Someone who honors her heart enough to walk away from anything that dishonors it. She's not hard to love. She just refuses to be loved halfway. That's not too much. That's her standard. And only those who rise to it will find a place in her life. If you return, you'll find a different woman. One who doesn't flinch at your silence. One who no longer breaks under your distance. One who isn't holding on to the hope of your change. She's changed. And now, everything around her must meet the level she's grown into, or be left behind. She no longer waits for anyone to complete her. That illusion has shattered. What she once believed she needed from someone else, she now finds within. The affection she craved, she now gives herself freely. The understanding she once begged for, she now offers inward with compassion. The love she hoped would return in your arms, she now builds brick by brick in the sanctuary of her own soul. And in that transformation, she has become unshakable. Not cold, not bitter, just whole, solid, grounded, immovable in the presence of anything that doesn't honor her essence. She doesn't romanticize absence anymore. She doesn't turn neglect into longing. She doesn't mistake silence for mystery. She sees things as they are, not as she wishes them to be, because when the heart matures, fantasy dissolves and clarity rises. She now recognizes the difference between someone who leaves to find peace and someone who leaves because they never intended to stay. That distinction has become her protection. It's the lens through which she filters everything, not out of fear, but out of wisdom earned through pain. She's not punishing you. She's not waiting to be pursued. She's simply outgrowing anything that forces her to shrink. Her boundaries are not walls, they are invitations for real connection. But only the courageous will enter. Only the honest will stay. And if that isn't you, then her door no longer opens to that kind of energy. It's not resentment, it's alignment. She has finally aligned her actions with her worth, her choices with her peace, her space with her standards. There was a time when she would have bent to keep the connection alive, compromised her values, bit her tongue, accepted the bare minimum just to feel close. But those days are gone. The version of her that needed you in order to feel seen has been laid to rest. What has risen in its place is a woman who now sees herself so clearly, so fully, that even your return cannot distort her vision. If you come back, it won't be to the same woman. She won't be waiting with outstretched arms and unhealed wounds. She'll be standing, tall and steady, ready to choose. This time, not out of need, but out of conscious desire. And if your presence brings confusion instead of clarity, she won't question her worth ever again. She won't plead for consistency. She won't analyze mixed signals. She'll listen to the quiet truth her soul has learned to trust. Because now she understands that love doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to be earned. It doesn't disappear when things get hard. And anything that feels like abandonment dressed up as freedom no longer holds her attention. She's too anchored for that now. Too awake, too deeply connected to herself to be swayed by what once kept her small. She's not angry. She's not waiting. She's simply moved on to something greater. Peace that no absence can shake.